And welcome back. We're here with our guests, Legislator Kevon Abraham and Wayne Wink, Democrats in the Nassau County Legislature. Let me put it to both of you. I think you kind of answered the question, but Kevon, just to finish it, are you saying you would not want to see NYFA institute a control board to have the state agency take over Nassau County's finances? You don't think that's a good idea?
No, absolutely. I don't think a control board is necessary. I think the best thing we need to be able to do is work with the county executive and the county working with the legislative majority to come to a common goal. And our goals are very simple. I think every taxpayer would understand them. Number one, obviously we don't agree with the amount of borrowing that's taking place. So from that standpoint, we need to see that number come down dramatically. We would like to institute some type of pay-go system which takes a portion of the operating expenditures and pays for the tax refunds. NYFA agrees with that. Agrees with Fitch agrees with that. So from our standpoint, those are the types of things we're looking forward to in 2011. And if we could get agreement that we can control the borrowing levels, I think we can move forward in the 2011 budget and maybe work with the county executive on some other items.
Wayne, do you think that the NYFA should take over Nassau County's finances?
Well, I mean, I think the concern about having any control board in place is that, you know, those who are most in need of county services, whether it be social service agencies or youth board agencies or things of that nature, oftentimes because they are considered discretionary spending on the part of the county, they're oftentimes the first targets. And those are the types of, the types of operations and types of services that the county provides that we think are very underrated. So obviously, any concern that could put those contracts in jeopardy, is significant, and that's one of the things that we're very concerned about. Obviously, as we look at this, whether it's Long Island Bus or Able Ride, or so many of the programs that some people in this county rely on to the exclusion of all others, those are the types of things that get into the crosshairs of a control board.
Do you think there's any regrets about having gotten rid of the home energy tax for $39 million? It was pretty much an issue that Ed Mangano was able to get elected on.
Well, Ed ran on it. There's no question about that. And the legislature passed the legislation to repeal it. And he signed it as one of his first acts. It was a $40 million hole that was dug as a result of that. So, clearly from the very beginning, the county executive needed to come into office in a cutting mode because he was cutting revenues. You got to cut expenses.
But then we had what I guess some people call it the toilet tax, the sewer tax. So we go from the home heating tax to went from the furnace to the toilet essentially, and in all essence, it's something that every single taxpayer, in that case, non-for-profits, Hofstra, the hospitals. Explain the tax.
Well, basically, it's a tax that was never been there before. From a technical standpoint, being that you can't tax non-for-profits, it's technically called a fee. But that being the case, all institutions, whether they be Hofstra, CW Post, hospitals throughout throughout Nassau County are all going to pay a fee based on the usage.
And they're up in arms over this.
Which is very hard to do because really there's no meter on sewage usage. There's a meter on water usage. And that's kind of how this is going to be tied into. But there's no meter on sewage usage. So from that standpoint, how do you really know how much somebody is flushing down in their bathroom versus what they're actually using at their kitchen sink or what they're actually using to...
It's like you don't even want to know, actually. Yeah. But beyond that, and how much money is that supposed to bring in?
On an annualized basis, I believe that's close to $40 million.
So it's close to the same amount.
Yeah.
And is there any potential legal challenge to that? Could that tax maybe never materialize?
So whenever you start imposing fees or some people call them flat-out taxes on tax-exempt agencies and tax-exempt properties, I think there is a serious question there.
Do you think the union should give the $61 million that Ed Mangano has asked for?
Truthfully, that $61 million number, I think, was made out of whole cloth. I think it just appeared out of thin air.
Well, should there be givebacks from the unions?
I think the unions certainly have a history of working with the administration and working with the legislature to come up with savings, to come up with ways of making the county sustainable economically and financially. And they've done it on more than one occasion just in the last several years. The problem is that they're being beaten up, quite frankly, by an administration that is trying to build enemies to attack $61 million in unilateral, imposed, involuntary concessions is neither a realistic number nor is it a realistic goal, quite frankly.
Kevon, do you accept Ed Mangano's criticism that this is an inherited deficit, that it's just coming home to roost now, the chicken's coming home to roost, and that it was a bloated government, that Democrats did nothing to get in line before he took over?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, from our standpoint, like I said before, we handed him a 2009 budget that passed for 2010, which basically was fiscally sound. So from our standpoint, there was a document. There was no reason to be with this hysteria that's going on, a control board or oversight board morphing into a control board. None of that would be an issue in 2010. We knew about the risk in 2011, 2012, and 2013. Those are things that we knew about at the time in 2009. But from a standpoint of whether or not he inherited a flawed budget, that is totally inaccurate.
Do you think there should be union givebacks, further union givebacks? They already have given backs a number of times.
Oh, no, and the unions actually, when we were facing the same type of situation, and luckily we're able to get some type of stimulus money going back into 2009, from that standpoint, the unions actually came to the table, deferred much of their salary going into the out years, have been able to give back in many multiple different types of ways. But if I'm looking at it if I'm a union president and I'm looking at it from their standpoint, they were told at that time that was enough. And now they're being asked to do this again. I think when the target keeps moving, you start to lose trust. And that's the one big thing that I think most of the public realizes at the same time, that the numbers fluctuate.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. We are out of time. Wayne Wink and Kevon Abrahams, Nassau Democratic legislators, thank you for joining us. And we'll be watching to see whether or not the state agency NYFA has to declare a control board to take over Nassau County's finances. At the beginning of the year, you'll hear from the Republican County Executive, Ed Mangano. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being there. I'm Richard Rose. Be sure to join us next week for yet another edition of Focus.
Show event for the